you don't have to fight yourself. I've learned this and I love this is what makes this work so meaningful to me and why it's like tolerable to sit in the mud so much of the time um, is that when we can let down that fight and find that whatever that thing is, that we can find strength with it, that we can work with it and bring it with us to wherever we want to go, that is that's it. So my favorite, the language around this is power with, not power over.
Welcome to How to Trust Yourself, the podcast for anyone who's done with the endless second guessing and ready to tune in to your inner guidance. I'm Anna Holtzman, and I get that feeling of trudging through life like you're wading through mud, trying to figure out which way to go. In my 20s, I spent more time asking what should I do with my life than writing about crushes or bad dates in my journal. I've tried on a lot of answers: architecture, publishing, editing reality TV for a decade, and finally landing on therapy and coaching, helping people like you connect with your purpose. But here's the thing I've learned through all those twists and turns. Trusting yourself is the key to moving forward, even when the path feels messy. So if you're ready to stop doubting yourself and start listening to your gut, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back, dear listeners. Today, I'm sitting down with Rachel Mooers, who is a brilliant psychotherapist who specializes in mind-body pain, chronic symptoms, anxiety, depression, and trauma. Rachel is the clinical director at the Better Mind Center, and she runs her own private practice, Mojave Wellness Counseling, in Nevada. She brings deep expertise in pain reprocessing therapy and emotional awareness and expression therapy, and more importantly, a deeply compassionate approach to healing. In this conversation, we explore a counterintuitive but essential truth. When it comes to healing, whether from chronic symptoms, emotional pain, or life's biggest struggles, the answer isn't to work harder or fix ourselves. Instead, it's about self-acceptance, ease, and moving toward what actually feels good. Rachel shares insights from her own healing journey, the tools she's found most transformative, and how this mindset shift applies to everything from relationships to career growth. If you've ever felt stuck in the cycle of trying to fix yourself, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Rachel, we have met just a few times, once in person and once before on Zoom before this. And I just feel like I've known you forever. I'm so delighted to see you every time that I've seen you. Thank you so much for being here. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, Anna, thank you so much. I'm stoked to be here, and I felt the same warmth when I met you. So I'm excited to join you here with your community.
Oh, yes, I can't wait for this conversation. And I would love to start off with the simplest of questions, which is, what do you do? And who do you help with the work that you do?
Yes. So my name is Rachel Mooers. I am a psychotherapist and I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. I help people as clients in doing psychotherapy within the state of Nevada, and I do coaching worldwide. So the people that I generally help are people who are struggling with something mind body related or something often in the chronic symptom world. And it's really about helping people from a holistic lens go forward towards what they want to do in their, whole world well-being.
And how did you get here? Because, I mean, I know teeny, not that much. I know a little bit of your story, but I know that you, like me and like most people that I've spoken to on this podcast come into the work that you do through a personal experience that brought you into the work.
Yeah. So thank you for asking me this. I think my experience of this is kind of funny compared to a lot of people who find the mind body world because they kind of had to. Um, my experience with mind body, like I've just been obsessed with the mind body connection since always.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's influenced by being an athlete and kind of growing up with that lens. But when I was in grad school, I was really into the mind body connection and being able to say, how can we help people from both? Because it didn't really make sense to me how, we just start addressing it from this kind of top down cognitive space. So,
And just to be clear, in grad school, were you doing a social work degree, mental health
oh,
counseling?
yes, I'm a marriage and family therapist.
Yes.
So,
Okay. So
uh,
that was the degree, and you were like, there's got to be more of a connection to the body here.
yes. And the thing that to know about marriage and family therapy or that lane compared to others is it's particularly focused on a systemic perspective, like how different things work together or like how a whole family functions
Yeah.
together. So
Yeah.
I already really liked that lens of, you know, we can't look at one thing in an isolated way. We have to look at the whole picture, the whole context.
Yeah.
Um, and in school, we were looking at that, but we weren't including the body. And so I just was really gung ho on learning about how can we bring in the body to any work that we're doing. So I was really interested in like yoga or breath work or trauma informed
Mhm.
therapies that look at the soma. Um, and so I started my private practice kind of focusing on that without really having a lot of people who were also interested in that in the same way. That was kind of like this is really important to me. I want to do this and incorporate this, but I didn't really know what that was going to look like. Um, and I ended up getting a job offer where I learned about chronic pain and pain reprocessing therapy because of my interest in the mind body connection. There was
Mm.
like hey, if you're interested in mind body, look at this. And my friend tagged me and was like, you should look at this, Rachel, because you won't shut up about the mind body connection.
Yeah.
Um, and it turns out that there was Christy Weepy with a role teaching pain reprocessing therapy. And Anna, like it made so much sense to me. The
Mm.
role of looking at how everything is influenced by that safety danger framework and how
Yeah.
our felt sense experiences influence everything else that happens for us. So
Mm.
I kind of backed into the chronic pain world, loving my body and having no idea about the connection there. And the funny
Yeah.
thing is that when I started learning about neuroplastic pain, uh, annoying shoulder pain that I'd had for about a year and a half, I was like, oh my God, this is what's going on. This is what it is. And
Yeah.
so it was really cool actually because I was learning about pain reprocessing therapy and how to provide that. And it already made sense to me, but I got to learn it firsthand of this is what's happening. And I felt the the change from
Yeah.
learning this or getting to somatic track myself, like just kind of going right into this world.
That's so, gosh, thank you for sharing this story because it's like your story, your way in is it's different from mine, first of all. And it's different from a lot of the people I've spoken to who who tend to have stories more similar to mine, which is that um I was already in grad school to I was changing to careers from TV to therapy. I was getting a mental health counseling degree. But then while I was in grad school, I was having migraine attacks just all the time. And so I was like, I need something to help me. And that's what led me into mind body work. But what I think is so interesting is like when you were saying you were studying marriage and family therapy, and family is about systems. And I'm like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense that that would relate, because for me, learning how to recover myself from chronic pain had so much to do with like an inner relationship. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like whatever I know about relationships is informing my recovery, and then my recovery is in turn informing my relationship. And I'm bringing this into a
Ooh.
question, which is like when you first started learning the chronic pain work, before you realized that you had your own physical symptoms that this could apply to, was it connecting to like other areas of life for you? Were you sort of like mapping that danger safety framework onto like things that you had experienced that now made more sense? Does that question make sense?
I think so. Like, what was my conceptual understanding or background that informed, like, that I could make sense of this or how to
Yeah.
orient?
Yeah. Yes.
Um, yeah, well, I think that my understanding about mind body or why that felt important, I always go back to like being an athlete. So I swam from like age 5 through college. And the event that I swam was the shortest one, the 50 freestyle.
Wow.
So that you can't really, there's not really a lot of space to mess up in a race like that because it's so,
Mm.
you have to be on and hit the things that you want to do. And so for a long time, I kind of knew that there was like, depending on how I was relating to that, the the feel I had before I went into a race could help me or it could not help me.
Oh, yeah, that's so connected.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So I think that piece was kind of my the felt your feeling about where you want to go matters. And you can prepare all you want, you can train all you want, but if you don't have that, right, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, like where you were at mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever you want to call it, prior to physically jumping in the water would impact how that swim would go.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is like, I think that's something like that wouldn't surprise anyone. And then anyone would be like, yeah, of course. But
Uh,
then, it's less common for people to then apply that to everyday life or experiences of shoulder tension, for example, or yeah, like just everything that connection is operating at all times.
right, right. And well, it's funny because I think that rule, or I don't know if I would call it a rule, but that the next word I'm saying is doubling down, like that truth. um,
Yeah.
it applies across the board. Like how you feel affects what happens with it. Because it's not like these things are these clean boxes that we like to put them in such clean boxes. And that's the whole thing about systems theory is you can't look at one thing and think that you can understand it from looking at it like this. You have to look at it in well, what's the context around this? What's going on here? How does this affect, I don't know, the relationships within and between?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'd like to go into another specific question for you, which is so when you did experience like oh, I've got this shoulder tension and this work that I'm doing can actually like connect to what I'm experiencing physically. What did you find to be the specific like tools, techniques, or concepts that you most connected to in your own, like, working with your shoulder tension and then in turn working with clients? And I really like to ask people this partly to demonstrate that there's no one size fits all here. Like, it's kind of like, different flavors for different people. So I'm curious
Mhm.
about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think I could put it into a couple themes. or like kind of general ideas. And so I think the first one that comes to mind of what was really helpful for me, and I think this is true for clients too, is it's having the right language and education around things.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know what something is, like if I didn't know that this was neuroplastic pain, I can't make sense of it. I can't work with it. Um, Being able to identify what something is or put language around it helps make sense of what do I want to do with this? What is it? What's happening with this? So I think the understanding, knowing things or learning about the mind body connection, learning about how different things work, how the brain works, how stress works, how that automatic pull away from things that feel dangerous works, that
Yeah.
all is really helpful so that you know where you're standing in the loop-de-loops of things that are going on.
Yes. I can relate. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
So I think getting language around stuff is very powerful. Um, I think besides another piece that is really useful is attunement.
oh,
Um,
I love that that's the very next thing you name. Like I'm like, yeah, I feel like most people start with the education, the framework, because it's like you need some way to orient. I love that the very next place you went was attunement. Because, you know, I, as far as I can remember, no one I've talked to has said that as kind of their like first go-to thing. And it's so important. It's like, it's everything.
yeah, I would be curious what your opinion is on that and the why. But for me, um, I think that there's something about being with. Attunement is about kind of starting where you are, and that's such a common idea. Like, begin where you are, or meet that from what's going on. And I think there's a lot we can say about that, of allowing us to be where we are. Just like if I'm in a pain flare, the yes, the yes, this is going on right now. What do I need from here?
Yeah.
Um, but attunement to me means that it's the working with of let me respond with care to
Yeah.
what's happening.
Yes. Yeah. You know, it's just making me think of how, well, what I hear just over and over again from clients and working with groups, and it's also what I find over and over again in myself, is that the fear that is such, the underlying ingredient of so many different symptoms, at its core is usually the fear of disconnection, of like the opposite of attunement. And like culturally, I think attunement is not such a central concept, but whether we're putting words to it, like you were saying, like having a framework for even like understanding that that's a thing and that we
Mm,
need it, even
mm.
if we don't have that framework, we feel the need. We might not know even what the need is.
I love that you say that, because that's exactly like, regardless of if we have words around it, that that need has a driving force,
Yeah.
right? So if we can kind of recognize there's something we need about that, but if we can meet what that thing is without fighting it or
Yeah.
working with it, that's when the door opens.
Totally. You know, I'm curious if this resonates for you. I'm trying to get away from that word because it's so overused, but I can't find a good replacement yet. But anyway,
Are you
um,
vibing with
yeah,
this?
a lot of time, when you work with folks who are coming in to work on chronic pain, oftentimes you're working with folks who are going like from doctor to doctor to doctor. Um, and so often I get the sense that even though what on the surface, what they're seeking is like a diagnosis and certainty about what's going on in their bodies, I tend to think what they're really seeking is attunement. And that tends to be hard to find in the medical system because it's not very set up well for attunement. I don't know.
I I agree with you wholeheartedly, Anna.
Mm.
I don't think the system is set up for space or time for
Yeah.
that. How can a doctor attune with you if they have 15 minutes?
And if they can, that's really impressive.
Right, right. Yeah, and that's not to say that, people aren't caring or don't want to, but like, talk about the setting being the space for that. But,
Yeah.
when you say that, it makes, I think a lot of what people tell me is valuable or what they get out, what seems to land or help people is the listening
Yeah.
and the attuning to, and that space of this makes sense in this context. When people get to be witnessed in that, there's something really powerful about that.
So powerful. And where mind goes, because you and I are both mind body geeks, like nervous system geeks. How would you describe why attunement is so impactful from a nervous system lens?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I don't know how I want to answer it. Um, uh, you know, I, it makes me think of like little kids when they're playing on the playground or if they're doing something new. And say, a little kid is on the playground and they're like, oh, I want to go down this slide, but they're a little bit scared. What would think about maybe a kid like this, but they go and they sit on the slide and what do? They look. They're like, are you watching
Yeah,
this?
that's
Or
so
do you see
true.
me?
Yes.
um, that that being witnessed, being seen, um, being held in that
Yeah.
way is really important. Um, yeah, I think about that.
Really.
I think, and
Yeah.
that's an instinct, right? No one does that with like it's not a cognitive. Oh, maybe I should. Hey, are you looking at me? It's like a, are you there? Are you with me? Do you see me? Do I matter?
Yes. I love that metaphor because it makes me think too of like our adult clients and how like going down the slide as an adult could be like applying for a job or playing a sport or just like all these things that take courage and having
Yeah,
that attunement in relationship, it just like helps our nervous system feel safe enough to like take that leap.
absolutely. I love that you say it like that because I always think about the push and pull between connection and autonomy, like independence,
Yeah.
how we need both. We need, that little kid wouldn't feel good if their mom was holding, say, okay, let's go down the slide. I'm gonna experience everything with you. But
Yeah.
also if mom was, or dad, like not to say, if parent was looking away while they went down the slide, also not good. We need that balance between both.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and we want to do the things like apply for the job or try something new and do all that. And we also want to know that like someone has our back.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we're being witnessed.
Yeah.
I love that. My gosh, I've taken you on so many tangents. Sorry. I started off with asking you about the tools and techniques that you've gravitated toward. I don't know if there are other ones you wanted to name too or not.
I think that covers like the main ideas for me, I think, are embedded in that. So, the
Yeah.
education, the learning about this stuff, learning, and I find like things like parts or journaling or different, like it's all good to learn about these and to use them. And the
Yeah.
attunement piece is the umbrella, I think, that I see the somatic practices or the what tool do I use when,
Yes.
or the compassion piece of the yes and. What? What's useful?
I feel like this is probably indicative of why you and I vibe and connected because I think having tools and practices and like things to do and to retrain your nervous system with are all great. And I use them and I use them with myself and I use them with clients and they're awesome. And I feel as though it all boils down to love, honestly, which is just another way of saying attunement.
Mm-hmm.
It's so simple. And
And
I
it's
think,
so hard.
yeah. And when we're coming in scared and, like ridden with symptoms and fear and all that stuff, um, it's hard to sit with simplicity at that stage.
I I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I think that's such a what you're naming is such a common struggle, um, because that coming to like what we're saying, I can imagine someone listening to this and rolling their eyes and being so annoyed
Yeah, totally.
because it seems so. It seems like it's not enough,
Yeah.
you know. But that's I think the irony or the paradox of this work, um, is that like it's this false alarm, it's this signal that's going off or it's the signal that's getting displaced. You think it's your shoulder but it's really all the feelings you never felt. uh, you
Yeah.
know, um, and that coming towards attunement is the corrective experience with whatever that was.
Ugh. It's such a corrective experience. And I'm so happy for your clients that get to receive like, we're we're not in a therapy session, but like I experience your attunement when I speak with you. I experience how present you are. And it feels great to be in the presence of that.
Oh.
It's like being in the presence of that attunement, suddenly all the complications and the like, what should I do? What should I do? Um, it can start to unwind in that safe feeling.
Yeah. Oh, I thank you so much for saying that. That's what I hope. And I think a lot of what I'm trying to offer is that it makes me think, Anna, your example of like support, I've been thinking about that since. And I don't know if people on your podcast are familiar with that, but that's where my brain goes, because that was such a great example of what that is.
I love that exercise. And I did not come up with that, by the way, just not to take credit for it. But yeah, folks listening to the podcast, if they haven't been to a workshop with me, are probably not familiar with it, but I'll just briefly describe. It's an exercise where you make a fist and the fist represents something that you're very frustrated with. It could be chronic symptoms, it could be anxiety, it could be frustration, whatever. And then with the other hand, you try to pry the fist open and you notice that the fist resists. Because when we try to get rid of a part of ourselves, that part resists. And then you like let that go. And then the part two is you make the fist again. And this time you simply gently but firmly cradle it and let the fist hang out in that cradle. And it just starts to melt, even if it's just a little bit. It's just that being held, having that presence with, like, as you've been describing.
That exercise is so powerful to show the what happens when we offer that support, that care, that witnessing. It's
Yeah.
way easier than the forcing, the prying, the making something happen.
I feel like so I want to segue, but I feel like we are already segueing. Like we're already in this, but I want to name it. As you were saying, it's helpful to name things explicitly so we can orient to them. And what I'd love to talk about and what we're already talking about is how clients usually come in. And when I say clients, like I'm including myself in that. I want to replace that word with humans. When any of us come into a see, we're seeking help with something, which we all need help with various things at various stages of life.
Mm.
So when a client comes in wanting to quote unquote fix themselves, they want to fix the problem. And usually they, i.e., me too, are like coming in thinking, well, I'm going to do this with hard work and effort. That's how I'm going to fix the problem. And it, speaking from personal experience, like it doesn't matter how many journeys I've been on, like recovering from chronic pain, recovering from chronic poor relationship patterns, like all the things. But then, the next thing that I'm ready to grow with, inevitably I come in thinking I've got to do hard work and effort and I've got to do a million things and I got to learn a million strategies. Like that's how the journey begins. And no matter what it is, I repeatedly find that what's needed is the exact opposite. It's the self-acceptance. It's gravitating toward what actually feels good and enjoyable. Who would have thought? Um, and I'm curious, like, what you'd like to share about, I don't know, what you see in your client work, how you help clients to move along that stage from needing to fix to self-acceptance and being.
I love this question, and um, I think I want to name what you said, or just emphasize what you said about this being a human experience. I think we all can resonate with this in so many ways. There's something that we want to change, and that's okay. That's improve, that's grow, that's get out of something that's not working and move towards something that is better. Um, that's a very honorable thing. It's about wanting to improve, and I think that there's something, and I wanted to say that first because I think we want to recognize the positive intention in that.
Yeah.
Um, and from the safety danger, nervous system framework, what message does your brain get if you go towards something in the I need to fix this? Um, it's non-accepting energy. It's fight energy.
Yeah.
So in a way, there's a good thing about it because you're engaging with something that you want to change, and it's good to go towards. It's not like you're saying, "Oh, there's no problem here," or "I'm going to, put my head in the sand." But
Yeah.
when we look at that, I have to fix it. I have to effort through this. There's something inherently non-accepting about that. There's a no in that, and that no is a danger signal. That no is where I am is not okay. So the message that your brain gets is, uh-oh. uh, so, when we're looking at where can we find our footing and go forward with what we want to do, where we want to feel better,
Yeah.
we keep talking about the same thing, Anna, but there's an acceptance and an allowing and an attunement of this is where I am now. And I
Mhm.
can be here. I'm not saying I'm going to stay here, but I'm saying I'm not going to fight this as if what's happening for me isn't okay. Um, I I always use this example, and maybe this is because this was a job I had for a while, but I taught swim lessons for a chunk of time,
Yeah.
teenager in my early 20s. And when you work with little kids who get afraid of the pool, like, parents are saying, okay, take my kid, I want them to learn how to swim. And the kid gets it right away if they're scared, if they're like, you're not taking me towards that water. Like, I am not. Um, I could have done, a lot of things. If we take the kid and they're crying or they're saying no, 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 and we put them in the water anyway, what feedback do they get about the pool? They learn
Right.
this sucks. This is scary. No
Yeah.
one listens to me. I'm not getting help with this in the way that I need. So it doesn't work to force it. You're not going to help someone learn to swim and have fun with swimming if we fight what's happening. And if
Yeah.
we hard work and say, oh, they just need to put their head in the water and blow bubbles, like it does not work. Um, but if we can honor, okay, you're a little bit scared, that's okay. Let's sit on the side of the pool together and let's look around. Do you see that kid going off the jump off the high dive? Whoa, did you see the splash he made? Whoa. If you can pause the fight and
Yeah.
allow where you are and work from there, then maybe they're like, okay, I'm calm. Maybe I'll put my hands in the water. Maybe I'll dip a toe in and realize it's okay. Um, I think that when we get into where we want to go, like, I want to fix this, I really want to make this different, we get so focused on what that outcome is that
Yeah.
when we have to make adjustments, it feels like we're being pulled away from where we want to go. And it's already so hard to not be there. So
Yes.
people get really fixated on, I want to go there. I'm going to make myself get there. Um, and then that, like, it's a very tough journey to make something happen like that. But if we can say, yeah, we're going there, I promise your kid is going to learn how to swim. We're going to figure out how to do this. But we get to say, do we need to dip our toe in the water and come out? Do we get to focus on what's nice about this and try a little bit and, step back for a little bit?
Yeah.
That helps you actually learn the things you want to learn. So you get there in a way that feels good rather
Mhm.
than through blow bubbles.
There's a question that's coming to my mind, and I think it's a question that doesn't have like any right or wrong answer. It's just like a human curiosity that's coming up for me because as we're having this conversation and I'm listening to what you're describing and completely, relating and vibing with it, I'm just thinking about how like any any journey I've been on, recovering from chronic pain, going back to grad school to start a new profession, learning how to be in a relationship, learning how to run a business. Um, for me, all of those journeys have started with push energy, with fixing energy, with, like trying to power through. And then it's
Yeah.
taken me a while to get to the stage of release, allow, let it flow.
Mm,
And the what I'm questioning is like, I'm actually not sure if I could get to the allow place without the push and the fixing to get it
mm.
started. And like, that's just me. I'm like, I think that's maybe a necessary part of my process. I don't know. Maybe that'll evolve at some point. I'm curious what your take is.
I love your honesty and how you name that. And you're like, this is a part of what it feels like for me. And I kind of coming back to your point, I think that there's a lot of ways to get there.
Yeah.
um, I think I've found that what I would say for me is I don't have to push. And there's a difference
This is
here.
amazing.
Well,
I can't wait to hear the rest of what you're saying. Yes.
the when I say this, I want to be clear. I don't mean that you don't have to try. Like,
Yeah.
effort is involved. You're doing something, there is output, but it doesn't have to hurt. It
Yes.
doesn't have to strain. And with I've learned this in so many physical things, like with swimming, with yoga, with different physical things, where if you try to make something happen, it doesn't work. If you try to make yourself feel something, you can't get there. But if you get it in the right order of, what would this feel like, what would feel nice. So let me actually just go into an example of this with swimming. So in swimming, if I was doing the 50 freestyle, and I was a freestyler, so I don't know how much you can see that, like, you want to be powerful and you want to be strong. But if I got too focused on, I need to make this happen, I need to, be really like, I over effort and I lose my pull on the water. I lose the natural strength that I have, and it ends up getting choppy. And I think I love comparing this to dancing because I feel like a lot of people could resonate with you want to dance and you get really nervous about how your body is looking or how other people are interpreting you or whatever. And it ends up getting way worse. Like whatever's happening,
Totally.
it's like, please don't. Whatever's happening, no one.
It's like a downward feedback loop.
It gets, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, but if you can relax a little bit and trust your body and let it be a little, you know, you can trust it. Your body shows up for you. So in swimming, we would always say, like, you already did the work, you already trained, you already like went to all your weight sessions and did all your practices. Now is about enjoying it and having fun and trusting that it's there. And I think I love the name of your podcast, How to Trust Yourself, because I think this is that idea where people think they have to force something or else it won't work. But like, think about nature. Like, an acorn does not think I have to become an oak tree. Just like that's some saying I've heard. It just does. Or I love thinking about this with a cut. If you cut your arm or if you get a scrape, you don't have to make yourself heal. Your body
Yeah.
knows what to do. You clean it and you don't put crap in it, and it will take care of it. So, with my swimming example, there can be I have to make something happen that ends up overworking where all your energy that could go into like getting into flow with something or like finding a rhythm or a momentum with something where you're still working hard, but you're not overworking that flow state, that space where it's like, oh, this feels good. And the
Yeah.
cool thing about this, I think I could say this, but I think you would ask any high performance anybody and they do something, you ask them, how was that? How was that amazing thing that you just did? And they're like, oh, they don't say, oh my God, I struggled and I strained every step of the way. They say, that felt good. That felt
Yes.
amazing. Um,
I recently did you ever watch the movie Billy Elliot?
no.
Oh, okay. Well, it's about this little a young boy who becomes a dancer as a very young boy, and he just like takes to it, and he's a natural, and he does an audition for like the Royal Ballet. It's in the UK, and um, he's not like much with words, but they ask him after he did his performance, like, what did that feel like for you? And at first, he's just sort of like, what do you even mean?
What do you mean?
But then he said, well, I sort of disappear.
Yes, you get
That
lost in it.
presence. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love hearing you talk about this. And I'll be honest, like, I'm like, that that sounds amazing. And there are certainly like lots of aspects of what you're describing that I can relate to. I think for me, the beginnings of my journeys always seem to start with this like urgency and
Mhm.
thrashing around kind of energy. And I think it's because going back to that element of trust that you were talking about, I think for me, it's not just that in the beginning, it's hard to trust that it'll quote unquote work, but
Mm.
it's also in the beginning, it's hard to trust that I will have the motivation, that energy for the thing, like that intrinsic motivation will last, that like, well, what if I just stop trying? I might just take a nap for the next 5 years.
I love that you name this because I think I hear what you're saying so much when we talk about this because people are always, I think that's such a natural question that people have of, no, it's not going to last. Like, I, maybe I can do it this way for a little while, but really, I have to, if I don't force, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. And that's that lack of trust.
Yeah. Well, and that's
Yeah.
where that pushing that I've got to make myself get there, that's where that comes from, right? That like, I have
Yeah.
to make this happen because I'm not trustworthy. I won't stick to it.
or even like my energy isn't trustworthy. Like, what if my energy just all goes away? I think that's a fear that comes up for me.
Yeah. When you, it makes me want to ask for you, like when you've gotten kind of over the struggle and you end up
Yeah.
finding your groove,
Yeah.
what happens with that energy? How does that energy transform?
Oh, it's so wild. I mean, this work is so wild, It's just like you have these experiences that feel like, what is even happening? Things change, like my experience is changing. And so yeah, I guess I'll use the chronic pain recovery as an example. When I started when I started to kind of like crest the wave of that journey, that's, to be clear, not a journey of perfection, of like getting to a place of never feeling any symptoms anymore, but it's about getting to a place of self-trust with it.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
I had this like ocean of energy open up. Just like s- so much creativity, and it was and then I kind of crashed and burned at a certain point, and then I had to find like a gentler flow. It was sort of like the dam had broken,
Ooh,
the creativity water was like gushing out, and I was like writing and creating nonstop. And then I hit a wall, and then I was like, oh, now I've got to find like modulation. I've got to regulate and
find my
find a
balance.
steadier flow for this energy that clearly is not going anywhere. Like this is a renewable resource.
That's amazing. But that's amazing because you found it was a renewable resource. It's
Yes,
there. It
it's
belongs to
there.
you.
It's a intrinsic part of the system. It's running the system.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love that you say that, because I think that is so true. Well, when you stop fighting and you start working with,
Yeah,
you free up a lot of energy.
so much.
Yeah, um, I think that's such a big piece of this, of that, like, I have to make this happen. If we can pause there and say, yes, we're going to go there. And I promise we're going to go there. I'm not abdicating or saying I'm going to sit in the mud forever. But if we get to say, how can I do that in a way that's um, then all of a sudden, all that energy that you are using to force, to make, or to fight gets to get redirected into what you want. And it's, of course, you kind of were like, I have all this. You probably had so many ideas that you
Oh,
were.
yeah, like overflow. Yeah, I love the hand gesture you just did, which for folks who are listening and not watching was like I saw your hands doing like a winding brook that's just like fishies swimming forward in a winding path. Um, I've got to rein this back into where we're going because I knew this would happen because I love chatting with you. We're like almost at an hour. Um, Briefly, I'd love to touch into how, I mean, I feel like we've already been going here, but how this theme of like when we release, let go, work with, allow, what are some random areas of life that you see this being true in other than chronic pain recovery?
Oh my gosh, it's hard to. I think it applies to a lot of places. So I think anything body related, Anna, like, and we say chronic pain, but I mean living in a body. So that's not just the getting out of, getting away from a symptom. That's the way you want to be with, and I used my swimming example, how you want to feel good with something, how you learn a new skill, like learning how to, you know, a new sport, or gaining more flexibility, or, having an orgasm. There's so many
Yes.
places where this
Yes. I feel
applies.
like that's a very clear example of it, having an orgasm.
Nothing, fight energy will not work. If you can focus on what feels good, all of a sudden we've arrived. What's going on? Surprise.
And I specifically love to ask people about in running your business, your practice, how do you see it apply there specifically?
Ooh, I think that there's something there about honoring, like, I can't get to where I want to go if I'm not making appropriate growth steps. So, uh, you know, for me and starting a practice, being able to say, well, where am I right now? What can I expect from myself right now? And giving space for things to grow, space
Mm.
for reassessment, what's working, what's not working. That is so critical because you can't, you have to listen to the feedback that you get, or
Yeah.
else you're not going to be successful, you know?
I love that you named that, and I feel like it's like, well, yeah, that's logical, but the the expectation piece, like what can I expect at this stage of where I am and how much time it may take for me to like experiment and learn. It's logical when someone says it, but I think so many of us, and I'm included in this, tend to go into things expecting to be at the finish line, like on day one. And that's a great way to be frustrated with ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and like, I guess to give us all credit in the career realm, there's there's hard lines of I need to provide for myself.
Yeah.
You know, I it's not like a so easy. If I fail, it's okay. It's like, no, I need to buy groceries.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that, like, the hard expectation or the really saying, I have a lot riding on this, I need this to work. I think that can pull us really far forward where we don't get to where we miss steps, or it's easy to miss steps.
Absolutely. And I also think, there's that absolute concrete truth. And alongside that, I know something that I've recognized in myself, and I see this come up in clients and other people, is that sometimes we're thinking that the pressure is solely like the providing for ourselves, but then there's this other sneaky thing that's going on under the surface too, where we're kind of measuring our self-worth by those numbers, you
Uh, Ding, ding, ding.
know?
I'm so glad you named that's like the underlying thing we need to look for all the time, right? Because it's
Yeah.
so easy to
Ah,
outsource our worthiness to any kind of external metric.
absolutely. Including with chronic pain. I mean, I experienced this, and I think all my clients experience this, where we find ourselves like, oh, I had a pain flare. Like, that's an indicator of my self-worth, which is just, oof, the tightest of knots to be in that place.
Yeah, absolutely. It can really um, dig in,
Yeah,
and 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 that's such a control trap, right?
totally. Totally. Um, I love everything that your swimming experience brings to your particular lens, by the way, because that's like I'm not an athlete on that level and never was. So I feel like there's very specific wisdom that you bring in from that experience. Um, but I want to take us to our final three questions because our time is coming. And the first of the final three is, if there is a soapbox message that you're personally passionate about spreading through the work that you do, what is a soapbox message that comes to mind in this moment?
Ooh. I think it's kind of the same. the same thing that we've been talking about, but I love the wording of, well, you don't have to fight yourself.
That's everything.
um, I've learned this, and I love this is what makes this work so meaningful to me, and why it's like tolerable to sit in the mud so much of the time. Um, is that when we can let down that fight and find that whatever that thing is, that we can find strength with it, that we can work with it and bring it with us to wherever we want to go. That's it. So my favorite, the language around this is power with, not power over.
Sorry, I'm going to let you say that again because I got so excited I oohed over you. And I just want to hear it again.
I love that. You're so fun. Power with yourself, power with the parts of you that you are fighting, power with your nervous system and your brain. It is not there to fight you. It is not there to torture you. It is there to help you. It has a wisdom. And so we want to find the wisdom and the message of whatever that is and work with it rather than have, overpower it.
That message, power with, not power over, to me is everything that the world needs right now and always. This feels really good to hear those words. Thanks for sharing that with me and with listeners. And for those listeners who are hearing this conversation and they're hearing your inspiring words about being with ourselves, allowing, supporting ourselves, being an ally to ourselves, and they're like, this is making sense. This sounds like the direction I need to go in. And I'm feeling overwhelmed and confused. And where do I even start? What words of encouragement would you give to the person in that place?
I think I would say one, like recognize where you are just by looking at this. Just by your interest in this, just by your curiosity, just by your own inner pull, if there's something about this that's right, or something about this that, trust that's your own cue of like your goodness, your wholeness, your wanting to help yourself go wherever you want to go. And if I would add to it, I would say, be curious about yourself. Cultivate curiosity about whatever is going on with you and your inner world. Because I promise, if you can, you will find that the answers from the inside out, not the outside in.
Totally. I feel like when we get into curiosity, we're already there. Because when we're curious, wherever we are is infinitely interesting.
That's so true.
Rachel, this conversation is infinitely interesting to me. You are infinitely interesting to me. I love chatting with you. Thank you for being here. And please share with listeners where they can learn more about you. And if they want to work with you, can they? Like, what are you offering? Please share that with us.
Yes, thank you. So I work with people in a psychotherapy setting who are within the state of Nevada. As that's where I'm licensed as a marriage and family therapist. And folks that are outside of Nevada that are interested in working with me, I can work with them from a coaching capacity. So that you can find me at my website at mohavewellness.com. Mojave is spelled Mojave, wellness.com. And you can also find me through thebettermindcenter.com.
Wonderful. And I know you're also on Instagram at Rachel Mooers, and I'll put the spelling in the show notes so people can actually find you.
Thank you, Anna. Yes, I appreciate the help.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure. I'm so glad that we've connected. It's so fun chatting with you. And thank you for being here. I look forward to speaking with you again soon, I hope.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure, Anna. It's so fun to talk about what this actually looks like when you're in it. And I hope that people find this helpful and resonates in whatever way, if it does, that it can be easier.
It can be easier. I feel like that's such a core part of the message that you're sharing with people. Thank you again. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor. Hit that follow button so you don't miss a thing and leave a rating or review. It helps more people find this show, and honestly, it makes my day. And if you're looking for more ways to trust yourself and start listening to that gut instinct of yours, come hang out with me on Instagram at Anna_Holtzman. Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, trust yourself. You've got this.